Karole Honas, here we are.
I know.
30, how many years?
30 years at Channel 8, 6 years at Channel 6, 6 years having babies.
36
that's
years.
my life.
Holy smoke. Does it seem that long?
Some days you can feel it in every bone in my body.
Yeah.
But other days I don't know what happened. And this last week, doing these interviews with different media, it kind of makes you peel an onion, like layer by layer by layer, and I'm going, wow, I packed a lot in there. You know,
Yeah.
it feels a little surprising. Wow, how did that happen so fast? But rewarding and good. And yeah, I still feel it in my bones pretty much. So.
TV news is not a normal job.
No.
It's not an 8 to 5.
No.
Well, what has it been like for you? I know that's a very broad question.
Yeah, the job's 24/7 if you're good at it. If you love it and the news is in your gut and in your soul, then you're always on. You're always thinking about news, you're always hearing something. I don't care if it's a siren down the street, you need to know what it is and why it is. So it's 24/7, but then the solid hours that you really have to be somewhere are 2 to 11, you know, if you're an anchor. So that's permanent swing shift, which most people work really hard in their lives to get off of. And in our business, for some reason, it is the shift to aspire to. Tends to be the better paid shift. And that's when news runs, is in the evening. So your entire life is out of balance with the bulk of the world. Certainly out of balance with your husband's, who does a day shift as a construction, guy. So you're always just kind of a click, not quite in sync with everybody else. And your whole life's like that.
And not only that, you have the job where everybody's critiquing everything you say, or at least watching everything you say.
Yeah.
So you have a cubicle with an antenna.
Yes.
And I imagine as you go everywhere, I mean, we just had lunch and 2 or 3 people stopped you. That happens everywhere in East Idaho.
Every day, all the time. My very wise father said to me one time, I kind of must have sneered about it or something and gone, sorry, Dad. And he goes, are you kidding? That's job security.
Yeah.
The day they stop recognizing you, the day you're out the door.
And have you had, though, angry people come up to you ever?
Oh, yes, yes. And generally, they're not really, interestingly enough, angry at us. They're angry at ABC, which we have no control over, but they don't quite separate. And so if they see it on World News Tonight, I may be able to answer for it and make them feel better about it and what I'm going to do to make it different. And we can't. I cannot change what ABC or CNN do. So we just try to balance it the best we can. But yeah, I've had a couple of pretty nice meals with my family interrupted by someone who just really had a bone to pick. And over the years, I got better at stopping it and saying, I'm out with my family right now, and this is a rare time for us. We don't get very many meals together. And so I'm going to have to ask you to call me during regular business hours and we'll go over this. But in the early days, when you're young and still learning, you're too polite to do that. But I learned over the years. There's a time and a place for everything, and sometimes you just have to put up the stop sign.
Let's go back to when you were young and new in the business. I did not know until this week that you're basically a Channel 6 pioneer.
Yeah, we started it. I know.
Tell me about that.
Oh, it was so fun. I mean, we were 21 years old. We were right out of college. We had all the energy in the world. We were excited to have been hired and get that first job. And the station had only been on the air for a little bit of time. We were in 3 different locations. We were in a bar downtown that we had apparently purchased, that the station had purchased. Our film lab, because we were still film back in those days, 16 millimeter was in a barn out at the zoo, Pocatello Zoo. And our set was in an old furniture store, a very well-known furniture store in Pocatello's warehouse, where they stored their extra, I guess, washers, dryers. I never really looked to see, but it was pretty amateur hour. And we had so much fun. We'd put the show together and we'd do the 6 o'clock live, then we'd record the 10 o'clock, because there's only 3 of us, so we really couldn't work 24 hours a day. But I got sports, because we hadn't hired a sports director yet, and so they would leave like a 3-minute black hole in the show, and then I'd have to run in at 10 and sit on the set, turn on all my own lights and everything, and then the master control would pop to me for 3 minutes of sports, and I'd have the day updates, whatever the scores were.
Wow.
So I did that for a long time, and I didn't know anything about sports when I started. And my husband was pretty athletic and quite sports-minded, so I'd call him every day, what's important today? Okay, this fight, you have to get the winner of this fight tonight, this ball game, this whatever. You get it off wires, because we didn't have the feeds like we have now, and then you report it. And then we would go to commercial break, and I'd turn all the lights off, lock the door, go home, start again at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Oh, my word. And you did that for how long?
We did that, that was almost a year, and then it started, growing. The station started growing. So I was there at Channel 6 for 6 months, or 6 years, but the phenomenal growth in that amount of time to where we became what I would call a real station. But when we very first started, we didn't even have desks. So we just sat on the floor, cross-legged, with our little electric typewriters. And the guys that were used to frequenting the place would pop right in because, it was a bar for years and years on Main Street in Pocatello. And they looked a little different when they walked in there.
Maybe gave you some news tips.
Yeah, we're like, we're not a bar anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
sorry.
Wow. So you did that for 6 years, and then you decide to start your family.
Yes.
And did you have the goal of getting back in the business?
Not especially. I mean, Channel 6 kept calling me to come back and do other things for them. Election nights, produce specials. I did a lot of proof of performance, PSAs, I guess we called them, or promos.
Yeah.
So I would kind of work part-time for them when I was home with the kids. And then every time I'd just about maybe go back full-time, I'd get pregnant again. It was just a miracle. And so then I'd be, okay, never mind. I can't quite come back to work for you yet. And then it happened the third time. And I think at that point, they're like, you're done. You're so out of here. We're good. So I was completely out of the business. And then got that call from Jay, the infamous call of, our anchor has gone into labor early, and we are desperate for a female anchor for about 6 weeks. Could you fill in? And at the time, I can remember the phone, which was still hooked to the wall.
Sure.
Do you remember? And there was a mirror somewhere. I was like, oh, I don't think you're going to want me.
You said that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you've been home with babies for 6 years. You don't look like an anchor anymore. You don't do the haircuts and the makeup and the clothing. And Jay said, well, would you come and do at least an air check? And I thought, oh, what the heck? So I did, and then they hired me. And then all my girlfriends just rallied around me with clothes and makeup and jewelry and everything, because I didn't have a wardrobe. I had nothing. And I did the 6 weeks, and then I was done. Nobody said a word. I did my last show, walked out, went home, didn't go back. And then I get a call from the general manager, and she says, why aren't you coming to work? And I said, well, my 6-week contract's up. Nobody said anything, so thought I was finished. She's like, no, we definitely want to negotiate with you. So went in, and the rest is history. That was 30 years ago.
And since that time, 30 years ago, the business has changed so much.
You can hardly keep up with it. Yeah, constantly. Technically, really changed. But because of the technological changes, the way we do the job is completely different. So there's much about it I don't think is as good as what we did in the old days. I miss the old days. You caught the last skirts of it, I think. That ability to do rounds in person and have to know the dispatcher, and the dispatcher needed to like you to give you the address of where the accident was, because that was the only way you were going to get that address. And now you don't need that, because somebody has shot video of it on their phone and sent it to you with the address.
A viewer, somebody that you don't know.
Yes, and so when you call dispatch and they'd say, we don't have any information on that. And I go, oh, I've got video. Would you like me to send it to you? I mean, it just changed the game. So those personal relationships with law enforcement were not as necessary. And I think my young reporters are really losing out on something special by not developing that. There is just something to be said for that personal, one-on-one, being able to really trust somebody. Stories that I didn't put on the air because the officer trusted me enough to tell me why, and it was a perfectly good reason not to put it on the air yet, and I had no trouble withholding it. And you just don't have those relationships anymore.
Yeah, I remember going to the police station every day when I started going through all the files with the captain.
Yes, that's what we did.
Yes, no, and now it's email, electronics.
Yes.
It's definitely changed.
Yeah.
What has been the biggest negative change? Would that be it? Losing those personal relationships?
To me, losing those interpersonal relationships and those skills. It's a soft skill. At least I thought it was, but now I'm beginning to think we have to teach young people, because even in their own personal lives, everything is done on phone, and the ability to make small talk while you're setting up a camera. I find we have young people that have no skills in that. We did, and we got to know each other so well, the people we were interviewing, that you'd call the next day to see how their kid did in their soccer game, because that's what you were talking about while you were waiting to do the interview.
Yeah.
We just don't see that anymore. That's a loss, I think, in many aspects, just that personal one-on-one.
What's been the biggest positive change, do you think?
You know, probably the fact that we do get so much from the viewers. It's almost like through the new technology, we've developed a closer relationship with them. Okay, so our closer relationship used to be with law enforcement, so you could get the story. But now people feel very much like that's their newscast because they contributed to it. You know, they sent the video in. They called us and told us that this was happening. And that's a positive. And when you ask your viewers, like the other night, 4 lights out at Arco football field fell over in the wind. They had a wind gust, 70 miles an hour. And so we heard about it, and so I just said right on air, I said, oh, we'd love to have pictures of that. If anybody's got some, you send them in, news desk, localnews8.com, boom, 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 boom. So these people watching TV at home going, oh, I got pictures of that, and send that in. Well, you didn't ever have that before. So there is a little bit of that, literally, I'm seeing you right through the screen, and you are listening to me and reacting to me right now.
If you've lived in Eastern Idaho all your life, I don't know if you know how rare it is to have the same anchor team together. For how long were you and Jay together?
30 years.
30 years?
Yeah, 29, I think, 29 plus.
But not only the team, but to have both individuals stay for that long, I don't know if we'll ever see that again.
It was pretty rare. I mean, it was rare 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Consultants would come in after we'd been together for 10 years and be amazed. And I'm not really sure why it worked out, except that both of us found Eastern Idaho to be a great place to raise kids. Our goals were very similar, you know, raise a good family, teach them to be good citizens, have them involved in their community. So this was a great place to do that and be on TV. So no, I don't think you'll see it again. I also don't think you'll ever see the yin and yang that Jay and I represented of this market, because we truly were the, you know, very conservative, not so conservative, you know, the really good LDS, kind of a mellow Methodist. And it gave us perspective on stories, so we could talk about stuff. And I think a better story came out of it in the middle, you know, because we both go, yeah, but, and then something would rise to the top that was even better than it would have been, you know.
Has there been a story over the decades that has just broken your heart?
No, rocked our soul.
Just crushed you?
Right. Well, this one that's going on right now with Vallow. I mean, I think back, we've had some horrible ones. Paul Ezra Road, Richard Levitt, even back when I was in Pocatello, 2 girls kidnapped from Alameda Park. And I was just like right out of college, like, that doesn't happen in Idaho. You know, I was raised in Gooding. We don't have kidnappings. And it was years later before they were able to solve these mysteries. But this last one, either it's because I'm older and more tender-hearted, or it really is the maximum evil I've ever run smack into in Idaho. I don't know how it'll all come out. I will be following you very closely, because you've been a step ahead on this story since day one, and good for you. But it actually hurt. It actually hurt me physically when they found the bodies. And that broke, you know, on the news, and I was just like, oh, I was just thinking there was a chance that they were at some guy's farm, you know, whatever, and we would be able to save them and, you know, bring them out. You've seen other stories happen like that, where they're kept in a back shed for 20 years, but they escape or whatever. I was just hoping so bad on that. The cutest faces, and every time they come up, I can go, okay, you know, Vallow children, dead, safe, you know, in God's hands now. But then the description of how they were found and what they might have gone through, and I just, wow.
I remember hearing, it's funny you say this, and I want to remain neutral in the story, but I heard the day after they were found how their conditions were, and it was like a gut punch.
It's a sucker punch, I know.
And I covered the execution of the DC sniper. I've covered other things, as have you. But when I heard that, it chilled. I can't describe it. It's weird to describe just how it was. But
yeah, I had I think that was, I was anchoring with Todd that night, and I got pretty choked up. And that'll happen to me every once in a while, more so with age, you know, probably another good reason to retire. Todd was signaling to me, you know, we're 6 feet apart, like we have to be now, and he's a little bit behind me in the studio, and he was kind of signaling like, do you need me to take this?
Really?
Because it's going to come out of the live shot here. Are you going to be able to do it? And I did, but there isn't anybody in the audience that couldn't tell that I had a lump about that big in my throat. That one has really hit.
On the other end, a lot of fairs.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of fun stories, I'm sure.
Fun
Have you
stories.
had an experience that tops them all?
A couple of them. Mike Coates' first day, and he's been with us 14 years now, and we're really close. And I've been there for all of his children being born. We're good friends. And his first day at the fair, somebody came out and hugged me. Well, we hugged in the old days before COVID. This was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
And I am a hugger. I am a German hugger. And so somebody just came up and gave me a full body hug. And then she backed away, and she had mustard all over her shirt, which is now all over my shirt.
Yeah.
And Mike was just horrified because he's from like the LA area, and people don't just hug like they do here. And so he just could not believe a total stranger would come up. Well, I was used to that because there are no total strangers in Eastern Idaho, and there certainly isn't when you've been on the air for a long time. Everybody knows you. But that was so funny, and he was just like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" Well, I just live a couple miles down the road. I'm going to go change my shirt. So I just left, changed my shirt, came back to work, had on another Channel shirt. Yeah, it was fine. It was no big deal. But I could that's just so typical of the fair of just all kinds of people and very affectionate. And then I just had that one experience. That just still to this day kind of rocked me. Just a guy sitting right by our booth, in a cowboy hat. I like those cowboys, so I sat down by him, take a load off for a little while, and we just visited and had the nicest conversation. And then the next year, he came up and said hi, and he says, do you remember me? And I usually don't.
Sure, yeah.
Like 90% of the time. And I said, "No, I'm sorry, can you help me?" Yeah, kind of remind me. He goes, "I was sitting here last year, and you came and sat with me for a while, and we visited." And he said, "I was going to commit suicide that night, and I didn't because some of the things you said." And I was just, what if I hadn't been nice? What if I hadn't just, it's like a, I don't know, instinctual, godlike thing that just sort of scooted me over there. I talk to everybody.
You do.
What if that one time I hadn't? Anyway, I just said, "Are you okay now? Is there anything I can do to help?" He says, "I'm fine." And he said, "You just helped."
Any stereotype that you might have of an anchor, you are not. As far as being snobby, mustard on a shirt. You think about a big anchor in a big market who would be horrified, as Mike was.
Right.
But you definitely have that touch. How about an interview? Is there somebody you've been able to meet in the course of your career that changed you, or you always wanted to talk to, and you got a scoop with them? Or?
Yeah. I worked really closely with the Isom family, and that was years and years ago, and they had a little boy with a very odd, new to us disease. And, I fell in love with this kid, and fell in love with the family, and fell in love with their efforts to pay for his medical bills. And this is even before I had children, so I didn't even know how big a bond that can be. That is your life. And he did end up passing away, and I went to the funeral, and I was just friends with the family. And one of the boys, the oldest brother I believe it was, got a hold of me the other day when he saw I was retired, and he said, "You probably don't remember this, but I did." And that family became my family. And I saw him at the fair in line to get into a venue or whatever. And I just went and got him and ran him to the front of the line. You can kind of get away with stuff like that. And just loved on him. Just loved on him. They'd been through hell, And very faithful, very big believers. It's all okay. That inspired me. You can go through that kind of a pain. And so there were several stories like that, with people that had struggles health-wise, that you couldn't do a lot for, but you could maybe do a little bit for. Then, and I gotta tell you, at the end of the day, my favorite interviews were always with those little 4-H kids. And I was doing a live shot one year with this darling young man whose name, of course, I can't remember, and he had his big bull there, and he was showing it to me, and he was explaining all about semen, and I was learning biology. And I said, and it was getting quite detailed. Yeah. And we're live,
Oh, wow.
And so I'm kind of like going, all right, I bet you know things that a lot of kids in your class don't know. I believe you've educated our audience.
There you go.
He was priceless to me.
Yeah.
So anytime we got to do things with kids, that was just absolutely the best. That was what's right with the world.
Yeah.
You know?
It's funny that people will say, oh, it's so cool you get to interview the governor or the senators or celebrities, but I find those aren't really the memorable ones.
No.
They're cool.
They're
it's
fine.
It's neat,
They're lovely.
but
It's fun to know
those
them.
4-H kids.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, true or false, Karole Honas.
Oh, boy.
I've got 7 questions here,
All right.
and you can decline to answer.
Oh,
Is it true?
I have an option.
Yes. Is it true that you were hours away from leaving Channel 8 and joining Channel 3, but a call from Jay Hildebrandt changed everything?
That is true. Yeah. I was in Fred Hoop's office to break my contract. I had just had a bad row with the owner, general manager, and I was just done, finished. Like, you cannot be more finished than that. And Fred's talking to me and reading over my contract. We're trying to figure out how to get out of it. And Jay calls and I said, it's Jay, I'm not gonna take it. And Fred says, go ahead and take it. And Jay says, Karole, I go, you can't talk me out of it. And Jay says, we've been sold. Fred, we've been sold. And he's like, dang, hard to hit a moving target.
Yeah.
So why don't you just go back to work, see what happens? That's what I did.
Wow.
I know.
Is it true you've had offers from larger markets because news directors saw your work on other reporters' tapes?
Yeah. Yep, that was funny too because one of our first consultants did not like the way I anchored. I'm very folksy. It's a very Karole Honas style. Not everybody likes it. Fortunately, Eastern Idaho liked it.
Yeah.
But he told me, he tried to make me a little more straight or whatever. Couldn't really do it. And he said, okay, but he says, you can never take this show on the road. And I said, well, okay, I don't really want to go anywhere, so I guess that works for everybody. And then not long after that, I started getting offers because of the way I would toss it, to a reporter out in the field. And so I never sent a tape out, ever. Once in my life, not.
Wow.
I never have put together a resume tape.
Wow. Do you save all your stories?
No.
I mean, do you save some stories? Do you have?
Nope.
You have nothing saved.
Jay has it. If I need something. Jay, did you save my story on? He was just fabulous about saving things. So no.
Wow.
I never saved a single story. Why? What are you going to do with them?
Wow.
Why? To me, it was like a dust collector.
Well, now you can put them all on YouTube, and they're there forever. So.
Who wants to be here forever? Yeah.
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 Okay. Is it true that you and Jay worked out an agreement that you would read the hard news stories about crime and gritty topics, and he would read the soft news stories?
No, definitely not true.
Okay.
Jay is a hard, good journalist. He did have a little bit of trouble with body parts. When we would do, a lot of medical stories, and you have to use the real word.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't use the fun word. And Jay would just look at it, especially if it was a woman's health issue.
Sure.
Will you read that one? Yes, I will.
Okay.
So.
I was going to ask about that consultants tried to change your delivery style and make you not so folksy. Is it true that you had young reporters to your home on holidays to make them feel welcome?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these guys, I got to come out, for my first job with my husband, my best friend. I had somebody. So, yeah, if the reporters didn't have anybody, you bet. The door was always open. Jay did the same thing. They were always welcome at his house, too. We didn't like the idea of them having to spend Christmas or Thanksgiving alone. So we always did that. I love doing that. I'm going to probably miss that more than anything, is developing relationships with these, I call them the kids, affectionately. They have kept me young. They have kept me hip and happening. They're the ones that said, Karole, you have to read the Twilight series because that's all we're all talking about. And they wanted me to be in on the conversation. I was like, okay. So I read it. I'd come in and I'd go, this is ridiculous. She's got to have sex sometime. I mean, this has gone on 3 books now. Come on. And we just had fun. We just had fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it true that when you weren't on the 10 p.m. news, ratings would drop?
I never followed the ratings that closely either. So I do remember a time that Jay and I were taken off of Newsline, and the ratings dropped, and they put us back on, and they came back up again. And that was a really fun show. That was like the potpourri of everything that happened in the world, that you could put together. But I just never followed the ratings, It would have mattered if I'd gotten fired or a pay cut or something like that, but, my salary stayed the same. And Brenda, when she left us, Brenda Stanley now, and then went to the hospital, and then went to Channel 6, and then Mark Browning, who we'd also worked together for years, went to Channel 6, after he'd been in Denver for a while. We'd compete. And that was fun, because whoever won had to buy. So then we'd have dinner together or whatever, and the winner had to buy. So sometimes I bought, sometimes they bought. So it was fun.
Last one. Is it true you've always wanted to have a radio show to express your true thoughts about the news of the day?
Who have you been talking to?
Just saying.
You're getting in on the inside track of the Karole Honas brain right here. But, you know, that was 30 years of not having an opinion that you could share. And I have really strong opinions. And mostly people could tell. You know, it'd be an eyebrow or it'd be something. A lot of people have told me over the years, I know exactly what you're thinking. Well, that's bad. I'm not supposed to let that happen. But I did think sometimes when I listen to talk shows and they're very one-sided and I don't feel like the other side's being represented, I think I could have opinions now where I could actually say no. I think that's wrong. But I'm going to retire first.
Well, it could be your career comeback.
It could be, but I'm going to try retirement because it might be really fun. And it might be. I'm very good at it.
Yes.
I might not be, but I'm going to try to find out.
That's my next question. Any plans for retirement?
You know, travel. Well, of course, we were going to go and do and hit everything on the bucket list, and the stupid COVID, you know, has just shut everything down. Complete change in plans. And so at this point, camping, a lot of camping, and we like to four-wheel. So we've got the Razor. So there'll be a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of just good outdoor. And reading books. Again, I was such a voracious reader and I don't have time, and so I've been doing it on audio. And just the getting to turn a page. You know? And it's your book, you own it, so you can put it upside down on the table if you want to. You know, you don't have to take care of it. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to book reading, being with my horses, my little minis. We've never got to work with them the way we wanted to. I already heard from somebody in town that has minis that go to nursing homes and wondered if I'd like to kind of join their group.
Oh, that's great.
Oh yeah, that would be so rewarding. So I've got pets, I've got dogs, need training, I've got horses, you know, and then I've got a husband who I've been married to for 43 years, but we've really only been together for 20 because we've worked an opposite shift the whole time. So, you know, what if we don't get along? I don't know. I mean,
I think you'll get along.
I may have to work on my marriage. I don't know.
That could be a reality show, maybe after the fact. What I know you said you don't want to live forever, but what do you want to be remembered for?
I like to laugh, and I hope I brought some laughter into the viewers' homes. I hope I made people laugh and smile and have some joy, and that's what I would most want to be remembered for, is trying to see the lighter side of it, trying to lift up instead of put down. I would be happy if that were, you know, on the tombstone. She made me laugh.
Well, thank you, Karole. Anything that you want to add?
Well, I'm proud of what you're doing. Of course, you are considered to be our biggest competitor. And so, you know, I've kind of hated what you've done. But I've been very inspired by it because I see that's where we're going. You know, this is the direction we're going. And I think you're doing a really good job of laying out the ground floor of how news will be handled in the future. So I just am real proud of you. And in 2 more days, we can even be friends. But just, you know, not till I'm done, because you're still the enemy.
Well, okay? I have to say that I never worked at Channel 8. I worked at Channel 3 back when Channel 3 and 8 were separate. And the first time I met you, you were ringing the bell, the Salvation Army bell, at Sam's Club, competing against Jay. It was who could raise the most change based on the night. And I went over, not knowing you were there, and you were so polite and friendly and welcoming and warm. I'm like, wow, that's so nice. And then we kind of kept in touch. And then when I announced I was coming back here, you were one of the first people that sent me a Facebook message and said, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Glad to have you here. What are you going to be doing?
I know.
You wanted to know.
Everybody wants to know. And I had like one of the few people at Channel 8 that had that kind of an in with you. Or at least we had a little bit of a foundation to where I could ask, and you were always very honest. You always told me. And it's, you know, relationships are an awful lot more important than the 2 sides. I just hate the way the entire nation has gone to this. You have to be exactly like me and on my team. No, you don't. No, you don't. You know, God likes a garden with a lot of colors in it. You know, and that's the way I like my world. I like to have a lot of color in it.
Well, you've been such an example for me and so many young people scattered across the country. And I don't think there will never be another Karole Honas.
Well, it's okay that there isn't another Karole Honas, but there could be another, whatever, Jane Doe, and she will be delightful. Everybody brings something to the table. And so whatever the next person brings to the table will be phenomenal. It'll just be different.
Enjoy the four-wheeling and the camping.
Four-wheeling, camping.
And you say goodbye 10 o'clock Friday, right?
10 o'clock Friday night,
Okay.
yeah. And you know, guys, I'm not going to do a long goodbye. We've been saying goodbye since last November when Jay left. And every single one of his videos, I'm in them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we've been saying goodbye to me really since November. That's a long enough goodbye. So it will just be short and sweet and out the door.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.